Solomon's reign began with a gift, one unlike any other. God gave him wisdom and discernment beyond measure. This divine insight made Solomon a just and compassionate ruler, and his people deeply respected him for it. He wasn't just a king, he was a symbol of peace and stability, a beacon of hope in a time of lingering traditions. You see, back then, the Israelites were still worshiping in the high places, sacrificing on makeshift altars under the open sky. The temple of the Lord hadn't been built yet. Solomon knew this had to change. He envisioned a sacred space, one that would unite the people and honor the name of Jehovah. But there was a problem. At that moment, Israel didn't have the means or resources to build something so grand. That's when Solomon looked beyond his borders and set his sights on Tyre, a powerful city known for its wealth, expert builders, and abundant cedar and cypress trees. Its king, Hiram, had long admired Solomon's father, King David. So Solomon sent him a bold message. You know how my father couldn't build a temple because of the wars he faced? But now the Lord has given me peace on every side, no enemies, no disasters. So I intend to build a temple just as God told my father I would. King Hiram didn't hesitate. He was impressed by Solomon's vision and pledged his support. In return for timber and skilled labor, Solomon would send food and other goods to Tyre. This strategic alliance became the cornerstone of one of the most ambitious construction projects in biblical history. With materials and manpower secured, construction of the temple in Jerusalem began. It would take 7 years to complete, and every single detail was planned with divine precision. The Bible tells us the temple was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. Its interior walls were covered in cedar, its surfaces layered in pure gold. Imagine that, walls that shimmered like sunlight, a space that felt truly holy. But Solomon's ambitions didn't end there. After finishing the temple, he spent another 13 years building his own palace. It was a stunning masterpiece of architecture, with grand halls, massive columns, and lush courtyards. The stones were carefully cut and polished, smooth on every surface, fitted together like pieces of a puzzle. These two structures, the temple and the palace, transformed Jerusalem. They weren't just buildings, they were a statement. Israel was now a kingdom of wealth, power, and spiritual purpose. And news of Solomon's accomplishments spread far beyond Israel's borders. Solomon's wisdom and wealth didn't stay a secret for long. Word of his brilliance spread far and wide, igniting curiosity in kings and queens from distant lands. They wanted to see for themselves the monarch who had turned Israel into a thriving, powerful nation. And among those drawn to his legend, one figure stood out, the Queen of Sheba. Fascinated by the story she had heard, the Queen of Sheba embarked on a bold and epic journey across deserts and distant kingdoms. She came with a massive entourage, loaded with exotic treasures and rare spices. But she wasn't just there to admire Solomon. She came to test him. She asked him riddles, posed deep philosophical questions, and challenged him with matters of state, faith, and life. But Solomon, filled with God-given insight, answered each one with striking clarity and depth. The queen was astonished. She couldn't hide her awe and said to Solomon, "What I heard in my own land about your wisdom and achievements was true. But I didn't believe it until I saw it with my own eyes. And honestly, not even half was told to me. Your wisdom and wealth far exceed the stories." But Solomon's brilliance wasn't limited to his mind. His kingdom gleamed with prosperity. Gold, silver, and precious stones were everywhere. Every goblet in his palace was made of gold, not silver, because in Solomon's day, silver was considered too common to matter. His throne? It was a masterpiece carved from ivory and overlaid with pure gold. Israel flourished under his leadership. Trade routes opened, exotic goods from Arabia, Africa, and beyond poured into the kingdom. Jerusalem became a center of culture, wealth, and influence. Still, Solomon wasn't just a king or a merchant. He was also a writer, inspired by God to capture timeless wisdom. He wrote 3 profound books that still shape hearts and minds today: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. In Proverbs, he wrote down practical insights for life. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. In Ecclesiastes, he wrestled with life's deepest questions, its meaning and its end. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. And in Song of Songs, he celebrated love with raw beauty and poetic passion. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Solomon's reign was more than gold and glory. It was a moment when divine wisdom walked hand in hand with royal power, and the whole world took notice. But even the wisest man on earth wasn't immune to temptation. Despite all the blessings, all the wisdom, and all the glory, Solomon made a mistake, a massive one. He let his heart drift from God. He allowed desire and compromise to creep in, and it all began with love, or something like it. Solomon formed political alliances by marrying foreign women, lots of them. The Bible says he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. These weren't just marriages. They were connections to empires, cultures, and religions far from the God of Israel. Within the halls of Solomon's palace, a grand maze of cedar and stone, these women lived. From Ethiopian princesses with deep, mysterious eyes to the daughters of Pharaoh, each woman brought her own customs, languages, and most importantly, her gods. What began as diplomacy turned into spiritual compromise. Slowly, Solomon began to tolerate and eventually take part in their rituals. He built altars to pagan gods like Ashtoreth, Moloch, and Milcom. The same king who had built the majestic temple in Jerusalem for the Lord was now building shrines to false gods on the hills around the city. And God noticed. The Lord, who had once blessed Solomon with wisdom and peace, became deeply grieved. He said, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates." It was a thunderous judgment. The kingdom that Solomon had built, stone by stone, prayer by prayer, would fall apart after his death. And sure enough, cracks started forming. Enemies rose from within and outside Israel. Among them was Jeroboam, a servant of Solomon who would later lead a rebellion. He had been secretly chosen by the prophet Ahijah to rule over 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. Even though Solomon tried to stop it, the consequences of his actions couldn't be undone. But something remarkable happened before his story ended. In his later years, weighed down by regret and longing for truth, Solomon turned inward. And what he found wasn't gold, fame, or romance, but emptiness. That realization poured out in the book of Ecclesiastes, a raw, honest look into the heart of a man who had everything and found it all meaningless without God. Meaningless? Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Through those words, we glimpse a repentant Solomon, a man who had chased every desire only to return, weary and humbled, to the feet of God. Solomon reigned for 40 years, and when he died, his son Rehoboam took the throne, inheriting not just a kingdom, but a legacy both glorious and broken. Even so, Solomon's story didn't end in darkness. It ended with a reminder. Even the wisest can fall, but God's grace is still greater than our failures. And as centuries passed, legends about Solomon only grew, including stories outside the Bible. One tells of the Ring of Solomon, a magical ring said to be gifted by the archangel Michael, giving Solomon the power to command demons and spirits. Some say he used them to build the temple itself. Whether true or not, these tales show how deeply his legacy echoes in culture and myth. At the heart of it all stands one truth. Solomon's life is a mirror, reflecting both the heights of divine wisdom and the depths of human weakness. But even in his downfall, we see the possibility of redemption. And if you want to know more about the one person who may have shaped Solomon more than anyone else, his mother Bathsheba, click on the video next. Her story is full of strength, scandal, and wisdom, and it just might change how you see the king.